moving along, I'd like to introduce our speaker. And if you've watched his Facebook, when he does drone footage and takes pictures on the Saginaw River, I'm just in awe. It is beautiful. Plus that, he is the one that watches all of the vessels and marks all the vessel passages in our newsletter. So wonderful. And in his free time, he captains the Princess Winona. So, Todd, if you'd like, Todd Shorkey, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. For being retired, I'm busier now than I think I was when I was working full time. But yeah, for those of you who don't know me, my name's Todd Shorkey. I have a Facebook page called Saginaw River Images. A little bit about me. I'm married. I have my wife Marla. We've been married just over 25 years. I have two kids, a son and a daughter, Emily and Ethan. They're going to be 20 in May, and they're both sophomores at Saginaw Valley State University. I like to say I'm not a photographer. And I say that because I have no formal training in photography, and I don't sell my work. I even ask for a picture for a magazine or a web page or for themselves. I make a copy and give it to them. I don't sell anything. So I don't really consider myself a photographer. I just consider myself as someone that likes to take pictures. And last year, I got certified through the FAA as a certified remote pilot under Part 107 for small unmanned aircraft systems. And what that means is I can fly my drone for commercial purposes, and you'll get to see some of the work I do with my drone. I started out as a firefighter back in 1990. I started out as a full-time firefighter for Bangor Township. I worked there for about 4.5 years and got laid off. Got hired in the city of Bay City, and I worked there, retiring as a battalion chief in March of 2020. I took a year off after that, and then I joined the local volunteer fire department just down the street from my house, Portsmouth Township. And my wife looked at me and said, "You're doing what? After 30 years of being a firefighter, you're going back again?" So, yep, I did, and I'm still fighting fire, and I felt like I still had a few years left in me to do that. So, as I said, I'm also a captain and a deckhand for the Bay City Boat Lines. This coming season, 2023, will be my 14th year working there. I started out working as a deckhand for quite a while, and then about 5 years ago, I decided to get my captain's license. So I have my 100-ton Merchant Mariner's credential for captaining. Just renewed it for another 5 years, so I'm good. I really enjoy that. And I put that picture on there because of the beard. As a firefighter, I had to go my whole career and shave every day. I couldn't ever have a beard. So after 30 years of not being able to have a beard, I said, when I retire, I'm growing a beard. So I like to say that's my salty sailor look right there with that beard. I also work as a deckhand for the last 3 years for Malcolm Marine Incorporated. I'm a deckhand on the tug Manitou. A lot of you guys know the Manitou spends a lot of time here on the Saginaw River, so that's mainly where I work with them. I have taken a few trips with them on the Great Lakes, down to Lake Erie, down to Sandusky to pick up a barge and bring it back, and a few other things. I did some ship keeping for them up in Sheboygan last year, and I got some slides of that coming up. So that's a whole another animal working on a tugboat, doing ship movements and stuff like that. So it's been a good educational experience, and I've learned a lot doing that as well. It's helped me in my maritime career. Some of my social media pictures have been used. These ship carriers use my picture of the Charlie for some of their stuff online. That was last year's photographs. Vroon Group out of the Netherlands used my photo of the Iverbright for their newsletter. This picture here of the Mississauga got used on the cover of this book called Buckets and Belts by Valerie Olson Van East. She saw it online and said it'd be good for her cover of her book. Funny story about this picture. I was supposed to be going out to the lighthouse to help on a maintenance day, cutting the grass and working at the lighthouse. And Mississauga was coming in on her first trip under Lower Lakes colors, and the sun had just came out, and it was a perfect conditions for photos. So instead of going out to the lighthouse to work that day, I went and took pictures, and it was a good thing I did because that picture ended up getting on the cover of that book. So it worked out pretty good. I have been in Know Your Ships. 2004 was the first year I've had a picture in there. This was the Paul Townsend passing Agawam Canyon at Bay City Wirt. I've been in there a few more times since then. And I'm going to start off with some pictures that are non-drone, just some different events that have happened on the Saginaw River over the years. And we'll start with the Edson when it came to Bay City back in August of 2012. And I was working for Bay City Boat Lines at the time, working on the Princess Winona that day for the VIP cruise out to greet the Edson when it came in. And it was amazing. It was a beautiful day. Tons of recreational boaters out there on the river. Tons of people on shore watching everything. So that was taken from I was standing on the upper deck of the Princess Winona. That's the big Dan Ocean towing tug Colonel on the front doing the tow of the Edson. Tug Manitou was on the stern, controlling her from the back. And you can just see how close and how much recreational traffic there was on the river that day. Coming up to the work dock in Essexville where she was moored for a while before she got to her permanent moorings. Manitou putting the brakes on, stopping. You can see all the people on shore watching as they came in. The Manitou and the Colonel pushing Edson up against the shore, getting ready to tie her up. And the color is not that great in this picture, but I just thought it was appropriate with the flag and the military ship in the background. I thought that was a nice picture to add in there. Then almost a year later, after she came in, her moorings were ready down by Independence Bridge, and the tugs from Bush Marine, the Gregory J. Bush and the Edwin Bush, moved her up there and pushed her to her permanent moorings. And there's just a nice close-up of the Gregory J. Bush and the stern of the Edson. I don't know how many of you guys remember this, back from 1986, when the Joseph Franz got stuck in the Independence Bridge. It had been raining for quite a while, heavy, strong currents in the river. The Franz was coming through to go to the work dock and got jammed up in the bridge. Some different views from shore. This is from up on the bridge looking down at the Franz. I was lucky my uncle was the chief of police in Bay City that day, or at the time, so we had access that normally we wouldn't have got to get up there on the bridge and get some pictures. You can see her hull up against the side of the span. And you can kind of see the old style hatch covers, sliding hatch covers. You can see how close she was to shore, and the bow was right up over by the Goujon slip. There's a classic tugboat that a lot of you guys will recognize, the Kellers right there in the background, kind of in shadow. The Franz was wedged in the bridge for probably, I think it was 3 days. They tried different things to get her out, and finally they had to bring up the Malcolm Marine tugs, Barbara Ann and Malcolm. I also remember there was, I think, 3 front-end loaders on shore at the work dock with cables running out and different things they were doing to get her dislodged from the bridge. All right, the next one I wanted to go through is the Jupiter fire. And this, I'll never forget because I told you I was a Bangor Township firefighter starting in 1990. I started in January of 1990. So I was young, I was 19 years old. And when the Jupiter fire happened, I was just getting off duty that morning. I was at Station 7 on Wheeler Road at the Township Hall, getting ready to go home. And the alarm went off for a boat fire in the river. Now, when you hear that, you're thinking, okay, a pleasure boat, something small. Wasn't expecting anything like that at all. As soon as we opened the doors and pulled out of the station and saw the black smoke in the air, we're like, okay, this is something bigger than a boat. Here's the Jupiter before anything happened. This is coming in on the bay, out the front range, probably in the mid-80s. You can just see how low the pilot house sits and the shape of her. And I got a picture later on of her sister ship, the Saturn, and you'll be able to tell the resemblance. Ice fishermen don't seem to care that the boat's coming by. They're right out there, right by the channel, not too far from the Jupiter as they're coming in. This picture was taken from the command post at Total Petroleum. When we got there, we had set some portable monitor nozzles out on the dock just to try and spray water towards the Jupiter. It wasn't going to do anything. In all honesty, those lines were put there just to make it look to the public like we were trying to do something to put it out. But in all honesty, there was nothing we could do to put the fire out at that point. We just didn't have the equipment. And you can see the water is really not even reaching the Jupiter. So, but it looked like we were doing something. My partner got to go up with the Coast Guard in their helicopter and get some aerial photos. So that's from the Coast Guard helicopter. That's from our forward command post right up by the water's edge. And the person that manned the forward command post would sit and just make sure the boat didn't break loose, didn't move away from shore at all, keeping an eye on the draft marks, making sure the boat wasn't sinking, settling, anything going on, just kind of keeping an eye on things. This bulldozer was eventually brought in, and you can see the wire wrapped around the blade going out to the Jupiter, and they were afraid at one point that the Jupiter was going to float free and start going down the river on fire, hitting either the Independence Bridge or the train bridge, so they wanted to do something to shore it up and make sure that wasn't going to move. So a couple of our guys went out and hooked the cable to the Jupiter and brought it ashore and hooked it to the dozer to help keep it in place. I look at these pictures now and see just how old this fire apparatus looks compared to the modern day fire apparatus. And I think to myself, well, you're pretty old now too, compared to what you were back then. But we had fire departments from all over, Bay City, Essexville, that's a Bangor truck, Coast Guard, ambulances. We had pretty much everyone there. Yeah. And eventually we had Dow Corning's foam pumper came down for a while and helped us out, and all sorts of crews from all over, specialized crews, different departments, Bay City, Saginaw, Midland. And there was the aftermath after she sunk and was resting on the bottom and the fire got put out. An interesting story about the fire, when they brought up Boots and Coots out of Texas, the Wildwell firefighters to come put the fire out, they got the fire extinguished. We cleared most of our guys. We had been there for a number of days. I was stationed on the railroad bridge. We had a couple of portable monitor nozzles that spray water out, and I was sitting on the end of the bridge, and we were going to spray water at the Jupiter if it did break loose and come downriver towards us. And fire got put out. We all went back to the station, and we were just getting ready to go, and it reignited. Some hot embers fell down back into the fuel, reignited, and we started all over again. So it was kind of like the fire that would never end. Spent a lot of time there, but like I said, as a 19-year-old, it was an amazing experience. I got the fire of a career right in the first year of my career, so hopefully I never see anything like that again. And another ship that was in the Cleveland Tankers fleet, the Gemini, here on the Saginaw River. After the Jupiter fire and all the lawsuits and everything were done, the Total Petroleum Dock, which is now Marathon, they rebuilt the whole dock, brought it up to standards. It was a beautiful dock. Unfortunately, after that, it didn't get used too much before they stopped receiving shipments by the water. So, but there was the Gemini, which was also from Cleveland Tankers. Later, Cleveland Tankers sold that and became a member of the Algoma fleet as the Algosar. And then there's the Saturn, which looked remarkably like the Jupiter. And that was the only picture I've ever gotten of the Saturn. The one time I happened to catch it on the Saginaw River just after I started taking photos. So I was glad to get that, have that in my collection. Another thing that I was very fortunate to get a chance to do was get a ride aboard the Great Lakes Trader with the tug Joyce Van Eckenvoort. And a little background on that, I had been posting pictures online for a while, and the captain on the tug at the time saw my photograph, and he wanted to buy a couple copies of it from me. And I said, like I said, no cap. If you want it, I'll just send it to you, no problem. You can have it. He said, well, I'll do you a favor then. Next time we're in port, I'll give you a call. You can come on down and have lunch on board with me. So I got a chance to go down to the tug. They were docked at the Burroughs dock in Zilwaukee, taking on fuel. So I got to go on board the tug, got to have lunch, got to have a tour of the tug. And he said, we'll be back in a couple of weeks if you want to. We're doing a split load between the Bay City dock at Wirt and Saginaw Wirt. You can come on board. You can take a ride with us between the Bay City and Saginaw Wirt dock. And I said, absolutely, I'll be there. So as we're taking on fuel, you can see they have 4 fuel tankers here loading fuel on board the Joyce L. Van Eckenvoort. Here's up in the pilot house, the controls. Not real technical. I mean, it's pretty basic. That's along the back wall of the pilot house. And this exercise bike up here, when Captain Dave retired from Van Eckenvoort Tug and Barge and started working exclusively on the tug Manitou, he took that bike with him. And now, whenever I work on the Manitou, I see that bike up in the wheelhouse on the tug Manitou. So it went from a big tug to a smaller tug. This is down in the engine room controls. Sorry, that one's a little bit blurry. It was a little bit dark down there. One of the two Caterpillar diesels that power the tug. This is one of the rams that couple the tugboat to the barge. In the next slide, you'll see the part that actually attaches to the barge itself. But these are big hydraulic rams on either side. And there's the pin on the other side that pins into the barge to keep the two connected together when they're underway. That's the prop shaft, one of the two prop shafts. And this was a couple weeks later, and as luck would have it, of course, it was a gray, cloudy day that was slightly rainy, not the best for photography, but this was they're just finishing up their load of sugar stone at the Bay City Wort Dock. I was standing on the bow looking back. Shot down the unloading boom with the product coming out. The unloading controls in the unloading station. A little bit more complex. I don't really understand those looking at that. So looking at one of the cargo holds, you see the stone. And I refer to it as sugar stone. That's not the technical term for it, but this is the stone that's used in the sugar beet processing. Looking down in the hold, you can see the gate open right there and the stones falling through the gate at the bottom of the cargo hold. Crew member deckhand up on top with a fire hose, kind of helping to wash the product down the sides of the hold. Here's a better shot of the hold. So you can see the different gates open and the product going through the gates. You can actually see the product moving, and you can see it moving on the belt down below the cargo holds. This is towards the unloading boom. This is the belts that hold the product. There's a belt on the top and a belt on the bottom that hold the product up. Takes it up and dumps it in this hopper right here that drops it onto the unloading boom. This is looking down the tunnels in the barge. This is at the bow, looking back towards the stern of the Great Lakes Trader. Anchor windlass. And then that's the bow thruster. And just some of the cables lines running the shore on the deck of the barge. At this point, they were done unloading in Bay City and getting ready to head up to Saginaw, bringing the boom in. The lines were already thrown at this point, and we were actually moving down the river towards Liberty Bridge at this point. Wheeler's Landing. And at the time, with the tug and barge coupled together, the Joyce, Van Ecken, Vort, and Great Lakes Trader are over 800 feet long. The longest vessel that was coming up and down the Saginaw River at the time. When they turned around up in 6th Street in Saginaw, they had to disconnect the tug from the barge to turn. They couldn't do it as attached. And the longer the vessel, the harder it is to make this turn, because you have to get all the way through the bridge before you can start making the swing. And you can see the bow heading towards Vets Park. And it's just starting to go through the bridge. And there's not much room on either side. It's pretty tight. And you can see we're still aiming over here, but we have to come way over here. These captains are good. That's all I can say. They do a good job of navigating this river, because this is not an easy river to navigate on. Coming through Lafayette Bridge on the way up to Saginaw. Looking at everyone in line waiting for the bridge to close so they can get through. I'm sure they had some choice words for us. Coming up by James Clemens Airport, airplane coming in for landing. And you guys all know the saying, red right returning. When we're heading upriver, that red buoy needs to be on this side of the boat. So it's a tight bend. Those earlier pictures I was taking as we were coming through the bridges, I was actually standing on top of the wheelhouse of the tugboat. And once we got through the bridges, the captain said, you need to come down from there because they use my radars to help me navigate through this section of the river when we get through all the twists and turns up in the upper river. So I had to move down to the walkway down by the pilot house. And you can just see how twisty it is navigating up here. This is by Sheboygan Creek. This on M13. There's the bridges off to the left there. And the J.A.W. Eigelhart had just finished unloading up in Carlton at the cement terminal, and they were waiting for us to go by before they continued down the river. And it was an interesting story here, too, because the cook on board the Eigelhart used to be the cook on board the tug Joyce Van Eckenvoort. So all the crew members knew each other. So as we went by the Eigelhart, all the crew members were out yelling and screaming at the cook on board and sending their well wishes to him. So it was kind of a neat thing to see. And as luck would have it, right as we were pulling into the work dock and I was in the workboat getting off the tug and heading ashore to get picked up, the sun came out and it would have been beautiful for photography, but as it goes, a lot of gray pictures, a lot of gray weather, and that's just my luck. So there's also a story of the Joyce Van Eckenvoort and Great Lakes Trader losing rudders up in the 6th Street turning basin at one point. When the water levels were so low, they actually had a problem up there and lost at least one rudder up in the turning basin. That's pretty much after that happened. We didn't see them here on the Saginaw River anymore after that. So, and then comes what I call the drone era. I started flying in May of 2021. Had never owned a drone before, had never flew a drone before, didn't know what to expect. But I just saw so many pictures online of so many people that were around the Great Lakes that were using drones for ship photography. And the photos were the coolest thing. I said, I got to try this. So I made the investment and got the drone. And this picture right here was my first effort at taking a picture of a freighter on the river. You can come later on, you can go up and take a look at my drone. Pretty small. Right here on the front, that little screen, that little square box is the camera. That's all there is to it. It's an amazing tool, and I'm still, every day that I use it, am just amazed by what it can do. This is the Algoma Buffalo on its way up to Saginaw, coming through Bay City at the Uptown area. And it's just being a drone photographer, it's a whole new perspective on things. Everything looks different. Going by the Riverwalk Pier. Here's out by the Port Fisher dock, down in, you can see some of the wind turbine blades that have been delivered earlier. This is the tug Zeus and the barge Robert F. Deegan. They brought in calcium chloride from Ludington to be unloaded here. And the pipeline connections back here. Then at the mouth of the river, Paul Tregurtha coming in. It's been great getting to see the Tregurtha here on the river the last couple of years. Here is the H. Lee White in the slip at Bay Aggregates at sunset.
Where is that?
It'd be right down by Essexville. If you stand in Smith Park and look across the river from Smith Park is the Bay Aggregates slip.
Yeah, if you could say where these different docks are.
Sure.
I look at the ship passages and I don't really know.
Yep. This is actually in Bay City at the end of Wilder Road. You go out Wilder Road by Bay Harbor Marina. On the other side of this trees is Bay Harbor Marina. So, yep. And there's a overview of that. You can see Bay Harbor Marina right here, mouth of the river, Channel Island, the Olivelle Moor and the Menominee coming through the Lake State Railroad Bridge. I would be remiss if I didn't put a picture of the Princess Winona in here at her new dock downtown Bay City at Winona Park. This is the Laura Van Eckenvoort and the Joseph Thompson headed outbound, actually headed inbound, I'm sorry, coming by Port Fisher. This is Bitmat asphalt dock, and then over to the right of that would be the slip at Bay Aggregate. Alpena at the Wholesome Cement dock now, since Lafarge has been bought out and it's now Wholesome Cement. The American Mariner inbound for the Burroughs North dock, which is right next to the cement dock, passing the Alpena. It's kind of neat being up above and looking down into the cargo holds and seeing what they have on board. And so that's American Mariner, made the dock at Burroughs North, which is right next to Smith Park, across from the Bay Aggregate slip, and that's the Cuyahoga inbound heading up to Saginaw, passing her. Manitou was docked at the cement plant in Essexville, where it spends a lot of time over the summer. And here's the Saginaw coming in. And the Saginaw is going to be pulling into that slip at Bay Aggregates. And the next few slides kind of show the process of getting into that slip. Making the turn, bringing the stern around. And you can see the silt being kicked up from the bow thruster and the main engine. Making that tight turn in there. And it's shots like these that you can't get standing on the ground with a normal camera. It's just, the drone just opens up all these new possibilities to see these shots. And then they're alongside, they'll slide up to where they're going to unload at and tie up. That was a shot from on the ground. I do still take some regular shots while I'm flying my drone. I can let my hands off the controls. The drone will hover wherever I leave it at, and then I can use my other camera as well. So, 4th of July, standing on board the Princess Winona for the fireworks festival. Some shots from the dock. I always try my hand at fireworks. I'm not very good at fireworks. They're hard to, that's where the training as a photographer would come in handy. Here's our friend Olive Elmore again, who is I call her the workhorse of the Saginaw River. She's been here the most over the last number of years, more visits here than any other vessel.
Which one?
The Olive Elmore and the Menominee. Unloading here at this is the North, it used to be called the North Star Dock. It's the Essexville Wirt Fertilizer Terminal now. Algoma Innovator unloading. They're actually unloading potash, which is a type of fertilizer. And as you can see, they were having a problem with sticky cargo. Crane here has an excavator lower down in the hold trying to help move the cargo that's stuck. And there again, this is where the drone comes in. You never would have got shots like this from the ground with a normal camera, but the drone gets you up above and you can see these things that you normally wouldn't be able to see otherwise. Algoma Buffalo on her way out at the Lake State Railroad Bridge. Again, coming by the Algoma Innovator, still unloading. Now you can see 2 cranes here. They have a second excavator here at this point. They have 2 excavators down the hold working to help unload the sticky cargo. And then from the Princess Winona at night, on one of our cruises heading in from the bay, they were still working at the dock. So they were there for a couple of days trying to get that cargo out. And then Algoma Buffalo again, out on Saginaw Bay. As we were heading out on the Princess Winona, they were coming in. One of my favorites, the Herbert C. Jackson, unloading at the Wirt Dock in Essexville. Here's the Iverbright in the slip at Bay Aggregates. That's where they hook up to pump the liquid asphalt down the pipeline that runs up along the side to the bitmat tanks, those brown tanks that you saw in an earlier photo. I think Iverbrite was here 8 times this past season delivering liquid asphalt to bitmat. And then a shot from the alongside the cement plant across the river towards the Iverbrite. Quite a different perspective than the shots from the drone above. Manitowoc coming around the corner, heading outbound in Essexville. Another shot of Manitowoc outbound. See Bay Harbor Marina there in the background. And then a shot of the Manitowoc from the ground. This picture here, taken when I was working on the Princess Winona, and these 3 vets that were standing at the bow of the Princess were all sailors who had served aboard the USS Edson in the past. So that was just a very moving moment for me, standing there watching them as we went by. Very, very cool to be able to capture that and see them and talk to them afterwards about their experiences on the Edson. Very, very cool experience. And here's the tug Laura Van Eckenvoort and Joe Thompson heading inbound at Independence Bridge, going by the Edson. This is one of my favorite photos I've taken with my drone since I've had it. Herbert C. Jackson inbound, coming up the river. Iverbrite's in the slip at Bay, gets tug Manitou's standing by at the stern. They're getting ready to pull her out of the slip and get her turned to head outbound. And then another view of the Jackson. I love these reflection shots. They're always cool to catch. This is the Iverbrite coming in, getting ready to make the turn into that slip to unload. Tug Manitou's hiding behind her. You can't really see her in that shot, but she's back there. Alpena inbound off the Bay Harbor Marina, heading towards the cement dock on a kind of a threatening day. Another day of the Jugurtha coming in. Kind of cool. You can see all the different spots where they hit the bow thruster to kind of push the bow into shore. I believe that's the Manitowoc coming into the work dock in Bay City. All right, this next section of pictures, working for the Bay City Boat Lines, every 5 years, our boats have to be taken out of the water, inspected, had the hulls inspected, the Coast Guard checks everything out for safety, make sure everything's safe. So every 5 years, the boat needs to be pulled out. Well, there's nowhere around Bay City that these boats can be pulled out of the water. So in 2021, we took the Islander up to St. Ignace to be pulled out at Starline at the Mackinac Marine Services. Now, if any of you have been on the Islander, she's a good sturdy boat, but she's not the fastest. We did about 5 miles an hour, and the trip to St. Ignace took us 41 hours to get there. So this is Gravelly Shoal. And that was the sunset on Lake Huron that night. There's just something about being on the water. It's amazing. The next morning, the lighthouse at Middle Island. Now, that previous shot, red sky at night, Sailor Delight, that wasn't the case for us because up around Alpena and Thunder Bay Island, we got into some very rough weather. We were rocking and rolling all night long. It was a rough night, but she started to smooth out the next morning. Passing Stoneport up by Rogers City, the Dirk Van Eckenvoort and the Michigan Trader loading, and then anchored off the dock waiting for the trader to leave so they could load. The Oberstar, we kind of passed in between them. Old Presque Light. New Presque. It was a long trip, but you can't beat the scenery. I mean, it was definitely worth it. It was a great experience. Our second night, seeing a sunset on the trip. We're getting close now because in the next picture, we can see the Mackinac Bridge. So we know we're getting close. And just because you can see it doesn't mean you're close, because it was still a number of hours before we actually came by. And that was the only thing I was sad about, is that we came into port, going by the Grand Hotel and the island and everything at night. Didn't get a good view of things coming in, but the sunsets were amazing. And then a pull reef light. Back to Bay City, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service vessel Spencer Baird docked at Port Fisher, which is right there by the Lake State Railroad Bridge where they unload all the windmill components. It's been a few days here in Bay City. This picture is the Calumet, inbound by Sheboygan Creek, heading up to Saginaw. Looking at her, she looks great. Never would think anything was wrong. Beautiful day. Well, the night before, she had a little problem, and she got stuck at the Lake State Railroad Bridge. And what we believe happened that night was the wind had been blowing in out of the north heavy all day long. It kind of let up, and there was a lot of outflow. The cubic feet per minute outflow in the Saginaw River that day was off the charts. It was crazy. Well, the Calumet kind of lost control trying to get through the bridge. Stern went over out of the channel. Bow was wedged up against the opening. They were able to get out the next morning, as you saw in that earlier picture. Didn't need any tug assistance. The tug Kurt Lutkey was in town for some dredging work, and they were available if needed, but they were not needed. When I was down there flying my drone that night, one of the U.S. Coast Guard representatives came up to me and asked me if they could get copies of the pictures I was taking they could use for their report and send to Sector Detroit. So I gave them copies of all my pictures I took that night. Bishop Cotton coming into Bay Aggregates. Always good to see her here on the river, a very infrequent visitor, so it's always good to see her. Again, making that long bolt, making that tight turn into the slip. And then a picture from the ground. John J. Boland unloading Sugarstone at the work dock in Bay City. Close-up shot of the into the boom unloading. Herbert C. Jackson coming in at night, making the turn there by the cement plant in Essexville. And stern shot with the sunset in the background. John J. Boland backed into the slip at Bay Aggregates. And another shot of the Tricertha unloading at Consumers. This happens every once in a while in the morning. I love it, getting the sunrise coming up and getting the outline of the ship in the reflection or shadow. I was able to get a few shots like that this season. And then the Sam Loud preparing to back into the slip. They nose up to the cement plant, get the stern swinging around, and back into the slip. Shot of the Mr. Picotin in the slip unloading, and the Samuel D. Champlain and Innovation unloading at the cement plant across the river. American Mariner coming in, getting ready to make the swing to back into the slip. And then there's a shot from the ground level. Tug Dorothy Ann and the barge Pathfinder unloading at the work dock in Essexville. Kind of cool shot with the lights of Bay City up top of the screen, kind of seeing how things look at night. That's probably about 200 feet up in the air. And then another shot of the Pathfinder coming up through downtown Bay City. going through Veterans Bridge. This is also one of my favorite shots I've taken with the drone. A lot of people ask that are involved in the industry, how come the Manitou hooks up to the stern of the boat and doesn't go alongside of it to help turn it? Well, in that slip at Bay Aggregates, there's just not enough room because there's no way to get a tug alongside the vessel to pull her in, pull her out, turn her. So what we do is we hook a short line to the back, and we can push, pull, do whatever we need right from the stern of the boat. Works really good. And here we just pulled her out, and you see the tugs swinging the stern around so she can head out towards the bay. The Algoma Compass, which used to be the Adam E. Cornelius when it was sailed for our American Steamship Company, now for Algoma on one of its rare trips here to Bay City. Heading through the Vets Bridge, City Hall in the background. And then the Samuel D. Champlain and the Innovation unloading at the cement plant in Essexville. Minerva Grack coming in with a very unique cargo, a couple of motor yachts on board. Coming in, they stopped at the Port Fisher dock there where they unload the windmill components. The G-Tug Michigan assisting her in. There are certain companies on the Great Lakes, Spleethoff is one, the Big Lift Happy Series boats are the other. They have an exclusive contract with Great Lakes Towing to do the tug work. So that tug had to come up from Detroit to do this work. A lot of times Manitou will be sitting right here on the river, and the tug will have to come up from Detroit because they have the Great Lakes contract to do the work for those two companies. So it's a long trip. And a couple of times this year it happened where the weather was too rough for those small tugs to make it up from Detroit, and Manitou was here, so they subcontracted, and we actually got the work to do a couple of moves for the Happy Series boats. Ludke boats at the Port Fisher dock, getting ready for dredging in the next summer. This was 2021. They were supposed to start the winter of 2021 dredging in the outer part of the river out by the Channel Island. Weather came in too fast, they never got a chance to start, so they sat there all winter, and they actually sat there for the first part of the spring because Fish and Wildlife would not let them do any work until the bird nesting on Channel Island was over with. So it was late April before they got started on dredging. So sunset on the river with the Champlain and Innovation at the cement plant. And this is the small work tug with some barges that worked on the Liberty Bridge rehabilitation project. They struggled for days trying to get up the river, trying to break through the ice. It took them a while, but they finally made it up to Liberty Bridge. All right, the second half of this presentation mostly deals with from February 2022 to the present. The title of tonight's program was Saginaw River and Beyond. Well, this is kind of the beyond. This is Sheboygan. I was asked by the captain of the Manitou to come up to Sheboygan in February and ship watch on the Manitou. It was docked up there. Manitou came up to Sheboygan to assist the icebreaker Mackinac into the dock. Mackinac was having some problems with his bow thruster, and they needed assistance getting to the dock, so Manitou just stayed up there, and then they ended up throughout the winter assisted the tug Michigan and barge Great Lakes, which is a fuel tanker, in and out of the fuel dock there in Sheboygan. So this is from where we had the tug docked, taking some pictures of the icebreaker Mackinac, and then a tug level view. And here's the tugboat Michigan and the barge Great Lakes at the fuel dock in Sheboygan. They operated pretty much on and off all winter last season. Ironically, the tug Michigan had sunk not too long ago. I can't remember where. I don't know if... Okay. But there were some photos online of it resting on the bottom. So There's the Manitou dock. This is Riva Marine, the Riva Marine dock right here in Sheboygan. The Tug Bulldog. There's the Spencer Baird that I got pictures of in Bay City earlier in the year. You can see one of the range lights right there. Another view of the Spencer Baird, the Sturgeon. All right, year 2 of flying my drone. This is the year I got a little bit more comfortable with flying, and I didn't feel like every time I flew I was going to end up crashing or losing my drone in the river. So the quality improved a little bit, I think, in the second year. But this is kind of a neat shot. I like the Algoma Intrepid coming into the dock. You can see the train crossing the train bridge in the background. Pathfinder and Dorothy Ann coming around the bend in Essexville. You can see the aggregate dock off to the side. The GLO Strander, the tug, and the barge Integrity, they had departed the cement dock and were going up to turn around in the turning basin up in Essexville. Had a lot of shots of the Paul Tregurtha the last couple of years, but you had to with probably not going to see her here anymore with the no more coal being delivered here after May 2023, so got as many shots as I could. Ground level view of the Tregurtha coming in at the mouth of the river. Now, this picture, my Saginaw River group of tracking freighters and taking pictures. My friend Gordy, my friend Logan, my friend Patrick. Logan is actually a mate for Interlake Steamship Company. He sailed this year on the Jackson, the James Barker, and the K Barker. But these 3 guys and I are some of the big watchers of the boats on the river right now. I always enjoy seeing them. We're all down at the mouth of the river getting the Tregurtha coming in. American Courage. The tug Candace Elise pushing the Robert Deegan. In an earlier picture, you saw that the tug Zeus was pushing this barge. The tug Zeus has left the Great Lakes now. It was a Dan Marine tug, and it is no longer on the Great Lakes, and it has been replaced pushing the Robert Deegan by the tug Candace Elise. And like again, they haul calcium chloride into the Port Fisher dock. Kind of a cool shot. You got the Candace Elise and the barge coming up. Some of the Ludke dredging equipment off to the side. And who was that unloading there? American Courage unloading at Burroughs North. Some people will say that this is the ugliest boat on the Great Lakes. It is the tug Defiance and the barge Ashtabula. I don't know, I don't think it's that bad. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, I guess, but any boat working on the lakes is a good boat in my opinion, so. Another good reflection shot, the Olivelle Moore and Menominee coming in at the bend in Essexville. H. Lee White coming in, getting ready to make the turn to back into the slip at the Bay Aggregates dock. Algoma Intrepid coming to the fertilizer dock in Essexville at Essexville Wirt. You can tell it's come to the fertilizer dock because they have the little tube on the end of the unloading boom to go into the dome. This is also part of the Saginaw River and Beyond. I took a trip to the Port Huron, St. Clair River area this year and went between Port Huron all the way up to Marine City area along the river, Algonac. The Cuyahoga headed towards the Blue Water Bridge here. Saginaw. Algoma Innovator. And every time I go to Port Huron, I always see the same boats I see on the Saginaw River. I never see anything new. It's always the same boats I see here in town. So One of these times, like when I go down there, I'll actually see some boats I haven't saw before. There's one, CSL Niagara. My first time photographing that boat. So this is like 2 days later after my trip to Port Huron, and here's the Saginaw again, outbound on the Saginaw River. I'm not going to complain though. I'll see the Saginaw anytime. She's one of my favorites as well. Paul Trikertha unloading at Consumers. Now here's another salty that came in. You remember the Minerva Grok that came in before? It had the boats on board. Well, if you notice back here, there's a couple of motor yachts on board again. So second year, another salty coming in, bringing some motor yachts in. This is the Nunalik. Again, Great Lakes Towing has the contract for this company, so they handled the tow job coming up from Detroit. And this is the Charlie coming in. This was the photo that D-Ships used in their social media of mine. They asked for a copy of it, and they used it in a couple of their publications. You can see the Tug Manitou trailing off the back, getting ready to come alongside and help it to the dock. These salties always come in with their cranes on the outside and no cranes up against the dock. And it's unusual that some of these boats come in, they have their cranes on their starboard side, so they have to be turned around in the river before they go to the dock. These ones can come in straight on, go up right to the dock. The other ones have to be turned first before they go in. The cranes are always on the outboard side. Sloman Discoverer unloading wind towers. People in the industry, I was told, call these tower sections cans. So if you ever hear the word cans used, that's what they're talking about, the tower sections.
What dock is it?
This is Port Fisher in Bay City, right across from Essexville.
That's what they used to call the Dow dock?
It used to be called the International Dock or the Dow Dock, correct. And you can see all throughout the season, you got the nacelles back here, the hubs, wind turbine blades in the back, tower sections. So different parts of the year, depending on what time it is, that whole laydown area will be full of turbine parts.
These coming from China?
They're coming from all over, actually. A couple of loads came from Spain this past fall. There's been loads that have came from South Korea, some from England. So there's no rhyme or reason. I don't know how they determine where they buy them from. I'm sure it has to do with money, but they come from all over the world.
Thank you.
You're welcome. There's the Dorotheana Pathfinder coming in to unload at the Wirt Dock in Essexville, and the Sloman Discoverer across the river at the Port Fisher Dock. Discoverer leaving, Tug Manitou turning her around in the river, getting ready to head outbound, giving her stern a push around so they can head out. Kind of a sunset shot at the Smith Dock in Essexville, GLO Strander and the barge Integrity. This is the Sophia unloading at the Port Fisher Dock, and you can see they have the section of the tower suspended. They're going to set it on this trailer to be moved to the yard where they're going to offload it to be ready for transport later on. Saginaw headed up the river towards the Milwaukee Bridge. John J. Boland backing into the slip at Bay Aggregates. This photo always kind of reminds me of almost like a painting, the way the colors turned out. This is the Happy Rover coming in. The Happy Rover visited twice in 2022, and then ended up going back to its home port overseas, and then it caught fire in the shipyard while it was being worked on. It doesn't sound like the damage was enough to take it out of service. I think it's repaired and back in service, but not good for them. The Sloman Discoverer at night at the Port Fisher Dock. Now here's some stuff from 4th of July this year. I hadn't flown my drone before during the 4th of July. I thought it'd be fun to lift off and just get some shots of Bay City during the fireworks festival. And I launched right from Winona Park where we had the Princess Winona docked. Straight up, just spun it around, didn't fly back or forth anywhere, just got some shots. You can see the Liberty Bridge in the raised position because they're doing the work on it, and then all the pleasure boats in the river. Carnival going on over in Vets Park and fireworks. So that was the first time I ever tried doing fireworks with the drone. Happy Rover again on its second time it was here, coming in with another load of blades. This is at the taking off the cement plant in Essexville, kind of at the curve in Essexville. And the Samuel D. Champlain and the Innovation unloading at the cement dock as she's coming by. After the Happy Rover came by, the tug and barge departed the cement dock, kind of backed into the slip at aggregates, turned around and departed the river. A lot of times they'll use that instead of the turning basin. There's enough room there. If they can, conditions are right, they can kind of back into that slip a little bit, spin the bow around and head out rather than going down to the turning basin, which is down by the train bridge. This next series of photos I really enjoyed. Sunset, great conditions, and I got 3 vessels passing each other. This is the Laura Van Eckenvoort and Joseph Thompson unloading at the Burroughs North Dock, which is right next to the cement plant in Essexville. Across the river, H. Lee White is unloading in the slip at Bay Aggregates. We got the dredging equipment for Lutke Engineering tied up over here. There's a sunset shot of the H. Lee White in the slip that same evening. Shot across the river from the unloading side. And then here comes the Sam Loud headed outbound. So it was pretty cool to be able to get 3 boats in the same shot on a great evening when the sun's going down and great lighting conditions. Herbert C. Jackson inbound for the Bay City Work Dock. And my friend Logan that I had showed you guys earlier was on the boat coming in. His parents were at the dock waiting for him to come in to see him. Of course, got to show the Princess Winona again. So it's great to be on the Princess and seeing all this traffic on the river, and you get a chance to photograph all sorts of wildlife, birds, eagles, sea freighters, all sorts of sights to see. So always a great time. The Alpina unloading at the cement dock in Essexville. This is the Samuel D. Champlain and the Innovation headed outbound on the Saginaw River. Sunset time, we're passing her on the Princess Winona, coming in from our trip out on the bay. Saw the sunset. Great photo opportunity. I think this was the first time that the Algoma Intrepid made a trip to the upper river. Usually when the Algoma boats come in, they unload at the fertilizer dock in Essexville. This trip, they went all the way up to the upper river. Shot of the Iverbright getting turned to enter the slip to unload at Bitmat. Dorothy Ann Pathfinder outbound Bay City. See uptown in the distance. This was the tug Lauren A. in the small pusher tug J Crab. They brought in these barges and the little long boomed excavator. They were working on the Liberty Bridge project. What they did was they put stone armoring, riprap stone around all the piers on the Liberty Bridge. So they'd bring the barge over to the Port Fisher dock off to the side here where they unload the windmill boats. They'd load up with armoring stone, take it up to Liberty Bridge, and then they'd put it around the piers for protection. Another shot of Olive Elmore coming in with Menominee. Iverbright in the slip, getting ready to depart. Manitou's hooked up to the back, ready to pull her out of the slip. So once the Olive Elmore goes by, they'll pull out and make the turn. This was a visit by the NAO Trinidad that came in, docked downtown Bay City this year for a week or so uptown. They were on their way to between stops in the Tall Ship Festival. It was unfortunate that we weren't able to have the Tall Ship Festival in Bay City this past year, 2022. But we did get to see one of the boats come in, and I was able to get a shot of it. So, Algoma Buffalo heading up to Saginaw. It's up by Sheboygan Creek. Another one of those shots with the shadow and the sunrise in the morning. And we were camping at Harbor Beach this past summer, and I wanted to go fly the lighthouse out in the harbor at Harbor Beach. So it's a long flight for a drone. It's hard to maintain visual on a drone out that far, but with the strobe on top and my family, all those visual observers, were able to get out there and get some shots of the lighthouse at sunset, which was really cool. Manitoulin, upbound near Sheboygan Creek. I'm kind of a rare visitor here on the Saginaw River, so I was glad to have great conditions for pictures that day as she came in. And my wife and I took a trip this year up to the Sioux to do the train ride at Algoma for the fall colors, and we stopped at the Sioux Locks, and who did I see? Saginaw.
You were being watched.
So I don't know if I was following them or they were following me, but caught them in 3 different locations all across Michigan. I was fortunate to catch great sky conditions as the Pulitzer Eartha was unloading at consumers. In the next couple of shots, I believe, really show some nice sky color. That's probably one of my favorite shots I've taken with the drone right there.
Are there any restrictions on how close or areas you're not supposed to fly?
Absolutely. It's funny. You can buy a drone at any store, take it out of the box, and think you can go fly it anywhere, and that can't be further from the truth because there's all sorts of restricted airspace areas, rules and regulations are supposed to be followed. Basically, you maintain a distance from the boats. You don't fly over top of the boats. You don't fly over consumers' property because they're critical infrastructure. There's warnings that you get for flying around James Clements Airport here in town. It's a non-manned tower, though, so you can actually fly over the airspace at the airport, but you just have to maintain visual observation that there's no planes around. But like Tri-City Airport's Class D airspace, and you have to get approval before flying in that area if you can get approval through the FAA. Even flying downtown, if you fly too close to the jail, that's a big no-no as well. So part of that Part 107 FAA certification that I talked about earlier tells you what you can and can't do, where you can and can't fly. There's all sorts of apps for your phone that you check to make sure you're not in prohibited airspace. And like when the president was in town last month or whenever it was, pretty much all of Bay County was a no-fly zone. There was a temporary flight restriction where you couldn't fly your drone anywhere in Bay County while the president was at Tri-City Airport. So it's something that you got to keep an eye on, keep checking on before you fly. Every time before you fly, you make sure that you're in safe airspace. And for a pilot like me with a drone, you can't fly above 400 feet. 400 feet high is the max, and you can't fly beyond your visual line of sight. You always have to maintain visual on your drone. So that kind of tells you how far you can fly and where you can fly. The Alpina unloading at the Wholesome Cement Dock. There's another shot of the Defiance and Ashtabula. Starting to get some fall colors on the trees and that time of year. I don't know, I don't think she's a bad looking boat. Pathfinder on her way outbound. And you'll see most of my shots are from the same area. I live close to Essexville, so I normally go down to Smith Park or in that area and do most of my shots. And I've told myself, looking back at some of the older pictures I've taken, I've become lazy because I used to go all over, up and down between Bay City and Saginaw. I had all these photo locations where I take pictures from. And in the last few years, I've gotten really lazy, and most of my pictures are from the same area. So I got to work to get better at that and get some variety in my background. I took this from the Tug Manitou. We had just pulled the BBC Kwiatkowski off the dock at Port Fisher. They had just unloaded turbine parts, and we had just turned them around and headed them outbound. This shot, I didn't know what I had when I took it until I got home and looked at it after I pulled it off the drone. This is the Laura Van Eckenvoort and the Joe Thompson heading upbound. They had just passed Cass Avenue, and her wake, pulling the water, stirred up the silt around the hull of the Chieftain. That's what you're looking at there, is the remains of the Chieftain on the bottom of the river. So I thought that was really cool. I didn't see that when I was flying and taking the pictures, but then when I was looking at it on the computer at home, I was like, what is that? And it looked like a ship. So did a little bit of research and found where she was resting at, and that's what that is.
And that ship, that boat is going up.
Yep, that ship's up heading towards Saginaw. So I thought that was really cool to see that. Here's the Happy River. Getting ready. And this is one of the boats where you see the cranes are on the starboard two side. So they got to turn the boat around, put the port side up against the dock, so the cranes are on the outside when they unload. So the G-tug will take the boat up there by the turning basin up here, spin it around, and bring it into the dock. BBC Eagle. Sun coming up in the morning, going inbound. Tug Manitou pushing it up against the dock. American Mariner backed in at Bay Aggregates. This is the BBC song, and this was an unusual cargo in that the parts that they're unloading in the cargo hold were going to Michigan Sugar as part of their new molasses, getting the sugar out of the molasses process that they're going to be doing. And these were all parts for the machinery that they were unloading from the vessel and taken across town to the Michigan Sugar plant over on Euclid. I know they're always trying to diversify cargoes coming in here, trying to find new things, trying to increase the shipping on the river. And so it's cool to see things like this coming in by water that you wouldn't normally see, the motor yachts, the industrial parts, things like that. It's always good to see something different.
By dimension, over to the right, there's a black line. Are those train cars?
Yep, those are train cars, and I believe I learned tonight, those are either bringing in fertilizer or liquid asphalt for the bitmat plant, which is just off to the right, off the screen. Yep, this is the whole laydown yard. There's railroad trackage that goes through it. All the parts get set down for the windmills.
Do they get taken away by train, the windmill part?
They get taken away by truck, by convoys. They will have police escort going through town, and they'll go on truck out of here. They have, in the past, brought the windmill parts in by train. I've seen Lake State bringing in parts, the blades, by train. Doesn't happen often, but it's happened a couple of times since they've been bringing them here. Then after unloading, the BBC song, heading outbound past Bay Harbor Marina. It's shots like these early in the morning where I kind of lay there and it's like, do I get up and go out and take pictures? Do I just stay home and not get ready in the morning? But usually when I get down to the river, I'm glad I got up because the lighting in the morning is just always so good for taking pictures. And this is at the Burroughs North Dock right here, this little small stone dock next to the cement plant. And earlier I showed you pictures of the Jupiter fire, and this dock actually used to be a grass field. And when the Jupiter burnt in the Saginaw River and blocked the river for however long it was there before they could open the channel back up again, a couple of the stone docks from Saginaw developed this into a dock to get their product because the boats couldn't get up to Saginaw to unload. So there's a Burroughs dock up in Saginaw and Burroughs dock here in Bay City, Essexville. But that was never there until the Jupiter incident, and that's when they, not a real big dock, not a lot of space there, but, and then the same boat, same day from the ground. Nice little reflection there in the water and nice sun. Olive Moore again with the reflection from the sunrise. Cuyahoga coming in, getting ready to back into the slip at Bay Aggregates. And then again from the ground. This shot was from a cruise on the Princess Winona. John J. Boland was heading inbound, heading up to Saginaw to unload. And Olive Moore was tied up in an unusual spot. They were tied up at the Port Fisher dock. And the reason they were there was they had a problem with their unloading belt in the cargo hold. They had to replace the belt in the hold. So they were there for a couple of days, getting a new rubber unloading belt to install. A very tedious and difficult project for them to tear out the old belt and put a new belt in while they were sitting there. So Algoma Intrepid coming in again at the cement plant in Escoville. You can see heading towards the cement or the fertilizer dock. Got the tube on the unloading boom to unload into the domes. Ivor Bright on one of our mini trips here this year coming in. And you can see we're getting towards that time of the year where that frozen stuff starts forming on the river. This was the Sam Loud headed outbound from Saginaw. You can just see the thin layer of ice forming. You can see her track where when she came in the night before, broke through the ice. Down in Escoville, Manitou sitting, waiting for her next job here on the river and the Alpena unloading. Christmas time, got the Christmas lights on her pilot house, a tree on her unloading boom, a star on the stack, all decked out for Christmas. And then this was just before the end of the year. Manitou came in to break a channel through the ice. Alpena was going to come in and unload at the cement plant, and then right behind her was the Baltic Earth that come in to unload coal at consumers. Pretty good ice starting to form on the river at that time. You can see the track that Alpena's leaving coming in. Making her way up the river to the dock. It's always nice to get ice pictures every year. And some years it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But this year was for the lack of ice that we've had in the river, it actually worked out where I was able to get some good ice pictures. And then there's the Jugurtha coming in off the bay. Manitou assisting her, pushing her bow up to the dock. And as the sun sets on my presentation for tonight, I'll do a few sunset shots to finish up. One of the Algoma boats, I don't know if this is the Algo Way or the Algo Ray, I believe this is the Algo Way.
It's the rail, Todd.
Is it the rail? Okay, thanks. Thanks, Gordy. Off the Princess Winona, coming in from a cruise on the bay, passing the Front Range. Coming up to the Lake State Railroad Bridge. This was up towards Saginaw, past Sheboygan Creek. Saginaw River Lighthouse from the Princess Winona. Another one of the beautiful sunsets we see on the bay. You see the life floats that were on top of the Princess on one of our cruises coming in. That's looking up the slip at Bay Aggregates one night when I was down by the river to get some pictures. Looking out across Saginaw Bay. This was kind of a neat shot with that band of bright light. This was a drone shot taken from my house. I just thought I'd go up one night and this fall or this winter and see what I could get for a sunset picture from the drone. That's a M15 right there, Cass Avenue, if you know the Bay City area. Shot looking towards Bay City from Essexville on the Saginaw River. This is something, these shots are from a farmer that I used to work for, and I asked him if it'd be all right if I flew over his field while he was harvesting one morning. It was kind of a nice morning, the sun was coming up, had the mist hanging over the field, low fog, and I thought it'd be a good photo op. And I'm really happy with these pictures, some of my favorites here. At the fountain by the Dow Building at Uptown. I have a crystal ball that I use for some pictures sometimes. I don't use it a whole lot, but every now and then I pull it out and use it to change things up with some of my photography a little bit. This picture is actually Tawas Bay. We were camping up in Tawas last year, and I got this picture at the sunset on Tawas Bay. That's the state park, one of the cabins at the state park. Kind of reminded me like a little bit of a Terry Redland picture, I guess. And Tawas Point Lighthouse. And that's all I have for tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it. Just a little plug for me. My Facebook page is Saginaw River Images. I have a blog page where I put my pictures, and I also have Instagram where I post images too. So if you're interested in following any of those, please do. And thank you so much. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.